Good morning and welcome to Moments with Melinda. My name is Melinda Moulton and I am here with Amanda Janoo. How are you, my dear?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me, Melinda.
Well, thank you for taking the time on this sweltering day. Normally, I'm upstairs where I do this recording, but I'm going to do it down here because it's a little cooler. But for my viewers, let me tell you a little bit about Amanda Janoo. Amanda is running for governor of Vermont. She is a co-founder of the Wellbeing Economy Alliance of Vermont. She was a Family Economic Security Fellow at the New Practice Lab. She is a visionary economist committed to building economies that prioritize people and planet. Amanda Janoo blends expertise in heterodox economics, industrial policy, and participatory governance. She has dedicated her career to advancing social and ecological well-being through economic systems change. Amanda Janoo has an MPhil in development studies from Cambridge University, where she studied under the renowned economist Ha-Joon Chang. Is that about it? Now, there's a lot more. There's so much more about you that I
Oh,
could, but
no, it's
it would
very
take almost the whole
fine.
show. But welcome to my show and thank you for taking the time because I know how busy you are. But Amanda, I want to start at the beginning.
Mhm.
Talk to us a little bit to my viewers about where you grew up and about your childhood.
Mm. Yeah, so I was born and raised in rural Vermont. So like grew up in a town, South Stratford, one paved road, general store, that kind of thing. And yeah, I've like quite a beautiful childhood. I would say like Stratford's a good about half back to land hippies, half like old school, like redneck Vermonters. And, there's like different politically, but definitely shared values related to some like self-sufficiency, appreciation of nature, weed, there was like some common causes there. But yeah, like growing up, my family would always take me to town meeting, and I think that was a really formative experience for me, like watching my neighbors and community just like debate and decide on everything from how much money should go to the roads and schools to if there should be GMO labels on our food. And that really taught me that like economic and political systems always work best when they're locally rooted and genuinely governed by the people and for the people. So that like informed a lot, I think, of my career path and the importance of more democratic systems, challenging corporate power, and really building resilient economies from the bottom up, not top down.
Fascinating, fascinating. So, who and what inspired you to pursue a career in economics?
Yeah. I mean, I think I always sort of seen the world as this like complex Venn diagram with all of these different like social, environmental, cultural, political issues, and felt like somewhere towards the center sat the economy, like the ways that we produce and provide for one another. That like if you changed that system, like so much else would ripple out and be improved. And so yeah, I mean, when I started studying economics, I will say like the standard sort of mainstream approach to economics is still very much this like trickle down economic logic that you just want to encourage and reward big corporations and investors and hope that that prosperity will trickle down and benefit everyone. Now, obviously, that's not how it's working. And so I spent a lot of my career focused on not just like how does the economy work, but practically how do you change it? So working with governments around supporting more of their own local industries, building more diverse, resilient economies that really provide the things that people need.
But was there somebody in particular in your family or a
Mm,
family member who understood or because it's very interesting that you went into this field of study.
yeah.
I'm just wondering what was the inspiration? Who was your mentor?
It's
I
a
mean,
good
I know that you
question.
studied under I know that you studied under Ha-Joon Chang when you were at Cambridge, but
Yeah.
as a child, were
hmm
you were you were you into this stuff, into figuring out systems? Are you a systems person even as a child? Was that something your parents saw in you?
Yeah. I mean, I do think I naturally sort of think in systems. Like I definitely focus a lot more, like less about maybe even like my internal emotional world as I do like just observing like what is happening out in the world and trying to make sense of it. But I mean, my parents weren't very political. Like my dad was a Republican, my mom was like a Democrat, but like not, like not super political in any way. And so it wasn't so much, I think, their influence, as much as when I did go to college, I don't know. I think I had a global political economy class with this guy, David Blaney, and we read this book, The Great Transformation, that was written in the 1940s. And it was a lot about how, like, our economic system is actually a cultural system. It's like the ways in which we accept the idea of like people and nature as commodities that can like be bought and sold, and that he was writing in the interwar period about how there's only so long you can treat people like commodities before they'll push back. And in his time period, he was witnessing that in the form of fascism and communism. And I think we're in like a similar kind of parallel right now where we've had a lot of like corporate globalization that has created a lot of insecurity. And we're seeing a similar kind of double movement right now of like people really reckoning with like, how do we build systems that make us feel secure and like valued and seen and like we can meaningfully contribute to others around us. But yeah, I don't know. That's a bit esoteric, but
Well, you're an intellect. I mean, there's no
yeah.
doubt about it. You have a brilliant mind. And so talk to us about your years at Cambridge University and some of the mentors that helped you create your vision for
Mm,
economic system change that supports people and planet. Talk to us about
yeah.
that time in Cambridge. I mean, did you didn't do where'd you do your undergraduate work?
I did my undergrad at Macalester College, which is
Hmm.
in St. Paul, Minnesota,
Okay.
and that was great. It was like a really nice liberal arts school. And I did 1 year of my undergrad at Oxford, actually doing politics, philosophy, and economics. And their economists were much more open-minded, I would say. I was studying with like labor economists and like learning about like different understandings of the economy. And so that was partially why I decided to go back and do my master's. But the real reason was I read this one article by Ha-Joon Chang when I was doing my thesis, my senior thesis, and
And
I
what
got a
was that on?
Fulbright.
What was that on? Tell me real quickly, what was your thesis on?
It was a lot around like international trade, and labor. And so what is that relationship between, in the US, for example, right? Like a lot of my lifetime has been witnessing so much of the like our manufacturing being exported to these other countries, like multinational corporations, really being able to move wherever they want, but people being stuck kind of in place. And what does that mean in terms of power dynamics? And I got a Fulbright scholarship right out of college to go to India. And I was studying with about this incredible women's labor movement in India, where this woman, Ella Bhatt, had taken like a Gandhian philosophy, to start organizing informal sector workers, like rag pickers and street vendors, and to unionize them. And people were like, you can't unionize them. They don't have bosses. And they're like, she was like, watch me. Yeah, power in numbers. And so, like, that's the power of them against middlemen, was able to really help them. And I reached out to Ha-Joon while I was doing that project, just because, and he was so nice. He'd never met me. He was super helpful. And he's from South Korea. And so his experience was very much witnessing the ways in which his country was able to achieve really rapid development. And it was through government strategically promoting and protecting like shipbuilding and other types of industries. And so at the time, the idea was always like the government should just take a hands-off approach, open themselves up to any type of investment, corporations, and shouldn't take a proactive role in like guiding the economy. And so that's what got me into industrial policy because that's what he was really passionate about, and working with governments to particularly produce more of their own stuff, be less import dependent, and have a little more self-determination
Fascinating.
economically.
So many of us in the sustainable business arena believe that sustainable practices also need to include profit. I mean, it's
Mm.
always been people, planet, and profit. Talk to us about why profit is not included when you say people and planet, or
Mm.
human well-being. Talk to us about why that's been somewhat eliminated from your, well, not really,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
go ahead.
I think that one of the big shifts, that I've been working on over my career is like recognizing, like for so long, we've sort of viewed the economy as the goal, right? Like we just need to promote like stock market values or economic growth, etc., rather than recognizing like the economy is just an aspect of our society. It's the way we produce and provide for one another, embedded within a larger ecosystem, right? So it's just a means. It's not an ends, right? Like, so even profit or things like this, like the ways in which we're producing and providing for one another, should be evaluated by its contribution to our societal well-being and like the thriving of our planet, as opposed to just, you know,
The
production or
GNP,
profit for
right?
profit's sake, right? Like that, it's not an ends in and of itself. It's sort of a means.
Yeah. And we're a capitalist society, so profit
Mhm.
is a big deal.
Hmm.
So what do you believe are the top issues? Two or three of them in Vermont right now that you're focused on.
Oh, well, here's the thing. I would say like the things as I've been going around the state, like I always start by asking folks like what are the things they're most proud of in their community, as a way to get a sense of that place, of their values, but also like where are these bright spots of innovation, of solutions already being practiced.
And you did that at the St. John Club, and I was there. And I
Yeah.
swear, 50, I mean, there must have been 300 people in that room, stuck in that room, but I'd say at least 50 people spoke up and
Yeah.
talked about it. It was a really beautiful, beautiful moment. So continue on. So, what are your top issues here? What are they telling you?
Yeah, so the things I think I hear most about, from folks that they're really immediately concerned about are like healthcare, housing, education. I would say that those are three issues that are very top of mind, but also jobs, right? And just quality of life, like the cost of living crisis in general. I think is a big issue. People are very concerned as well about our democracy, our environment. Um, and yeah, I think
Let's
and social connection also
well,
comes
let's
up a
take a
lot.
few of those. Let's
Yeah.
take a few of those for my
Yeah.
viewers. So, talk to us about what some of your policy solutions are for our healthcare crisis.
Yes. So yeah, healthcare. This has been a really great one because it is, it's so easy to get into the weeds around our very broken and collapsing healthcare system. And so this was another great example of, in Stratford and Tunbridge, in response to our we have the highest healthcare premiums in the country. Like people cannot afford healthcare now, and even the healthcare they get, they have to wait a really long time. The deductibles are so high, etc. They just hired their own town nurse, so everybody has access to some free healthcare. The nurse can go do house visits, for elders or if people are recovering from surgery, etc. And I was like, okay, great. This is good, because for me, so much of my orientation point was like the things we value most in Vermont are our communities, our natural beauty, and so what are the ways that we can advance and solve our healthcare crisis that helps communities? So bringing back small town doctors, nurses, healthcare providers to our communities and embedding them in our communities to provide good quality primary and preventative healthcare. And the idea is actually to remove insurance altogether, and this whole fee for service structure, just have the state pay primary care providers directly, like a good
That's
salary.
universal primary care.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
universal
Yeah.
primary care.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
when you go to your doctor, it's
Hmm.
paid for, and we have the money in the state coffers
Hmm.
to pay for that.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
save money because we eliminate the high CEO dollars that we're paying to insurance companies, and people are getting the health care without being denied too.
exactly.
And you
And
support
just
that.
becomes a public good that people get used to without having to navigate, that whole insurance system. And so, I mean, I would say some folks are also calling for like universal primary care, but it's still within the existing insurance kind of system of just increasing access to it. I mean, we don't have
But it'll
enough
reduce,
primary. Hmm?
right? But it'll reduce people's it'll reduce their insurance fees if
Yep.
primary care is paid for by the government. All of a
Yes.
sudden, then you're paying for
Hmm.
catastrophic. It basically is Dr. Dinosaur for
Hmm.
everybody.
Hmm.
So continue on. I'm
Exactly.
sorry to interrupt you, but
No, no,
I,
no, you're
I
totally
get
right. I
what
mean, it will reduce the insurance costs. It'll reduce pressure on our hospitals for how many people just go to the emergency room or wait so long. And it'll, you know, one of the things for me why it's really important that this is state funded is 30% of our budget comes from the federal government right now, and most of it is for healthcare. And I don't trust this administration. So it's really important to me that we are ensuring that like everybody has the necessary foundations that they need right now, and we're not gonna, yeah,
And I think our legislature would support that, but
yeah.
I'm pretty sure our existing governor would probably veto it.
Oh,
So
I'm
yeah.
sure.
And
Yeah.
but so anyway, okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about housing, because in housing and the unhoused. We have
Yes.
so many unhoused in this state. I
Yeah.
think right now we have probably more per capita than most in the country. Talk about
Yeah.
housing.
Yeah, I mean, we are in the midst of a major housing crisis, right? Like the cost of housing has almost doubled. And the pressure for people, like I'm a renter and I feel like, I'm like a legitimate professional. No way am I going to be able to afford a house within this existing system. So like we need some fundamental structural like housing reform and it's, yes, we do need to build some more housing, but I actually think that just building housing alone is not going to solve our issue. We need to severely limit like private equity and large corporate ownership of the housing stock because that's taken over. Like in Springfield, there's a bunch of these apartment complexes that have been bought up by private equity and they're just sitting empty because they get tax incentives, I guess, for it to being just like vacant there. And the property tax burden for Vermonters has also increased
Oh, uh,
massively.
uh, I mean, we've lived here for 56 years, and it's getting to be a struggle for us to stay here.
For
And the
sure.
and
And I
the
don't think anybody should ever be taxed into poverty, right? Like that's a really important thing. And right now, like it's increased like 40%, I think, over the last 5 years on average, like property taxes, which is not sustainable for most Vermonters. And so we need to increase taxation on like second homes, vacation rentals, luxury estates to reduce the property tax burden
absolutely, and
for
I'm
Vermonters.
going to get into that.
Yeah.
So education, I mean, did you support what was just passed in the legislature? You did not. Well, now talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so education has been the primary focus this year, which has been incredibly frustrating for me. Like, I don't fully understand why that was the focus as opposed to a lot of other urgent priorities. And some of the argument was around because we fund our education system through property taxes. But again, if we want to deal with property taxes, let's deal with it through property tax policy. The education bill that ended up going through, like there was this whole argument that we should force consolidation. So just like force a bunch of schools to merge. We did that.
We did that a few
We
years
did
ago.
that. Yeah.
Right.
And it didn't save any money.
It did. And we lose our little
Yeah.
schools that bring communities together.
Yeah, 100%. So and I went to one of these small schools, right? So the thing is, I'm probably also a bit biased, but I really believe in the importance of keeping our small schools open. And right now, at least the proposed formula will mean that every school only gets a certain amount per student. And so it will ostensibly force small
Force
schools
schools
to
to,
close.
unless they can raise private dollars in the community to keep it open.
Exactly, right? So then it perpetuates those inequalities
Right.
either
Yeah.
way. So, I mean, as I've been going around, so many people talk about how important the schools are, not just for their kids, but their communities. And in 2021, Vermont piloted this idea of community schools, which is where we actually integrate wraparound services like from nonprofits and from the state, like into our schools in terms of, for example, free healthcare or social work, mental health, like food banks, continuing adult education, using those buildings in the evenings. And that feels like it solves a number of problems
Totally.
all in one of being able to use that as a space to ensure you're providing those community services and diversifying the budget streams that go to our schools so that we don't have to close them, but we can actually ensure kids have the wraparound and families and communities like services that they need to thrive.
And for the, our whole disability community too, that needs our services. All right, so let's move on to many folks across the country agree that taxes need to be raised on the wealthy. Now,
Hmm.
you were not born during the Eisenhower years. I was. But
Mm.
back then, I believe the wealthy paid 85% of their income, which is
Mm-hmm.
what helped build, I mean, 85% of their income. And now it's like, well, some of these, the Bezos and the Elon Musk and stuff, they're paying basically zero.
Mm-hmm.
But the wealthy paid 85% of the
Mm-hmm.
income, which is what helped build the middle class. It built all of our transportation. It built, I mean, it's what really was this massive building in this country that made this country what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us about raising taxes on the wealthy here in Vermont.
Yeah. I mean, so I was just at a event up in Morrisville that was organized by a bunch of volunteers. It was so nice. I want to talk to you about that at some point. It was super fun. But one of the people who works in Montpelier was mentioning that they looked through the various candidates for governor's finance disclosure forms, and apparently I am the poorest and I am taxed at the highest rate. Okay. And this is
It's
the reality
crazy.
I know of our system where,
Oh,
and it's all based in this, like, really, even when the idea of trickle-down economics was popularized in the 80s, most mainstream economists were like, that's not a thing. That's not how this works. Like, if we just, but it's like so sticky in our logic that we need the, like, rich people and rich
oh, it's
corporations, like,
so
they're the
patronizing.
ones who are going to drive investment and create jobs. And
No,
so, like,
they're going to put it into their bank, give it to their bankers, and it's
yes.
going to be basically ink on a sheet of paper.
Yeah,
That's what it
and
is.
come
It's not
back
going to
to us
help
in the form
anybody.
of debt. That's what
Exactly. Here,
happens.
here.
And then
Wow.
it perpetuates further and further inequalities. And so I've been part of this Fund Vermont's Future Coalition, which has been looking at reforming the Vermont tax system so that it does reduce the burden for working class and middle class Vermonters and get it by getting the wealthiest to pay their fair share. So we've been trying to advance that through the legislature the last few years, and it's really popular actually amongst people. It's just
Absolutely.
a lot of the conventional wisdom in politics is still against it because I would imagine,
Well, we need to do a
yeah.
rally. We need to do
Yeah.
a big march. We need to get 25,000 people in Montpelier. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
other thing is people who have second homes, and a
Yes.
lot of the wealthy leave Vermont. They
Yes.
take their wealth to Florida and, but they come back here for their summer homes. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think we need to and and I want to say too that I honor the wealthy. I mean, I am not I have some beautiful friends, not many, who have wealth, who do more for this state than anybody ever. And they are givers. And then many of them have agreed to pay a lot more to
Yeah.
support the services that Vermont needs. And
Yes.
that's not even looked at. So
Yeah.
that's something else we need to do. So, what inspired you to run for the top ticket in Vermont? I mean, this is like you came out of, I don't want to say nowhere because you have this extraordinary background, but you came out
Yeah.
of the
Mm-hmm.
the world
Yeah.
into our lives, and you've just exploded into people's minds. And
Mm.
right now, I believe that you're at the top of where you need to be to win this primary. But what inspired you to run for this top ticket?
Yeah. Well, it's very fair, you know. It was sort of just like, who's this girl coming out of nowhere
Wow,
all of a
Amanda
sudden? But
Janoo.
yeah, but
But
it was.
you have exploded onto this political arena. I mean,
Mm,
you are, I hate to use the word gladiator, but you are like, I mean, really
yeah.
been
And
amazing.
maybe that's
So
also
what
just,
inspired you?
yes.
Where were you on the moment and the day and who you were you with? I think my
Mm,
viewers need to know this. When you said to yourself, you know what? I'm going to run for governor. What was that moment?
yeah. Well, so I don't know how everybody else was doing the first 100 days of this Trump administration, but I was freaking out. Yeah. Like I was watching what was happening to our country. I was looking at what was being prioritized in Montpelier. And I felt like this incredible sense of urgency that I was like, this is bad. Like, this is really bad. Like, this world ending bad. If we don't stand up and do something now, and I think maybe, I moved back to the US during Trump's first presidency because I felt a responsibility to try to help the situation. And yeah, I wasn't sure what to do. I was like, do I get involved just in like nonviolent political organizing, mutual aid? Like, what is the right thing to do in this moment? And I really feel like the root of fascism is actually economic insecurity. And I really believe that like this is what I've spent my whole career doing is to build more secure and resilient and like self-sufficient economies that give people a real voice. And if we can do that here and we can have states stand up in this moment and push back against this administration, like that is what needs to happen. Because I don't know where we're going to be in 2 years. And nobody seemed like they were willing to step up and run against Phil Scott. And I was like, we don't have time till it's politically expedient, to do this. Like this is the moment. And I think that's resonated
Where
with,
were you
I think,
when
a
that
lot of
moment
people.
happened? And and what was that moment like? Who were you with? Who you said? And what was their response?
I
Who'd you
mean, I
tell
think I said
first?
it maybe to like a friend. I was like, maybe I'll run for governor. And they were like, yeah, you should do it, like you should do that. And it
Let's go,
was like to this
girl.
point too, it wasn't like, I got tapped by a bunch of Dems or you know what I mean? That there was some thing. I was just like, this feels like of what I can offer
It's a
in this
kind.
moment. And no matter what, I really felt like a campaign itself can help to like build demand, socialize ideas, to connect people, and to help build the kinds of shifts and that we need in the state and in the country
And
right
you're
now.
doing it. Now you talk about refusing to accept
Hmm.
that collapse is inevitable.
Yes.
Um, or the best a governor can do is manage decline.
Yeah.
Do you feel that Vermont is in decline?
Yes.
And why is that? Talk to
Yeah.
me about that.
Oh, 100%.
Talk to me
I
about
mean, just people are burnt out. Like Vermonters are burnt out. Like we're working harder than ever and barely staying afloat. Like our basic needs are so expensive now, and it's healthcare, it's housing, it's food, it's energy. It's just the things you need to survive are so incredibly expensive whilst, we're facing all of these other really scary crises, right? Like climate change, fascism, AI, and it felt like we're not doing anything to address the current crises, let alone prepare for the others that are coming down the road. And this is the moment where it's, yeah, we can ensure that everybody has access to free healthcare and to affordable housing and to good locally grown food and to renewable community energy. Like these things are all very
other
possible. And actually,
countries
I think
do it.
Vermont is
Yeah,
so well poised to do it.
do
Like
that.
we have that ethos, we have those skills, we're handy, we know how to do stuff, grow stuff. It's just like invest in that and like let's build that really resilient, affordable economy together.
I think that's such a beautiful vision. I really do. And now, has Bernie talked to you? Have you talked to Bernie?
Not yet,
Not yet,
but
because you're Bernie, because you are a Bernie candidate. I mean, you are. I mean, Becca Ballant. I mean, there's this whole movement of the progressive Democrats. Not the progressive, but the socialist Democrats, the Democrats,
hmm.
and that's a movement that's really taking over in this country with
Yes.
the young,
Yes.
the old, you know, they remember Russia and communism and all that stuff
Mm.
in the Second
Hmm.
World War. And so they hear socialism and they just sort of start to pucker up and freak out. But
Yeah.
the younger generation is not part of that world. And the whole country is moving in this direction that Bernie has been talking about since he
Hmm.
was 30 years old. And
Hmm.
I'm just wondering, you must sit down with him and talk to
I
him
know.
because
I know.
he
We're definitely working on it.
okay,
I
well,
mean, he's
let's
been
make it happen.
such,
And if I can
yes, will
help,
you help?
I will help. So let me do that.
Okay.
So much,
Yay. Thanks, Melinda.
yeah, you bet. And you should read the book by Dan Chasen, all of
I've
you.
been listening to it actually
Oh,
on tape
listening
as
to
I've
it.
been like going around
And he is by
driving.
Dan Chasen. He's a Vermonter. He's a Burlington guy.
Great writer
Yeah.
also.
And so much of the suffering, here we're going to get into it now, Amanda. Much of the suffering we are seeing lately is the result of the Trump administration and the Republican Party attacking the poor, the
Hmm.
disenfranchised, and filling their own coffers with taxpayer dollars and corrupt
Hmm.
dealings. We don't, I don't believe, have this in Vermont. But let's look at our country today, 2 days before the 250th anniversary of our country's independence. How did we get here and to this tragically state of affairs? How did we get here? Is it,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my philosophy is when in doubt, just blame Reagan.
oh, blame Reagan. Well, a lot of my generation, we really hated Reagan.
Yeah.
And now Reagan's like, oh, Reagan, I would die to have Reagan as our president. I mean,
Yeah.
Nixon, bring him back. I mean, Title 10, compared to what we have now. But
Mm-hmm.
I just wrote an editorial and I'll be putting it up soon, but I really put it on us. I,
Yeah.
I think we're undereducated. And we have this news
Mm.
media, Fox News, that's been feeding the brains of people these right-wing lies that people have gotten addicted to. And so anyway, that's where I kind of land with it. But
Have you seen that meme where it was like all of the concerns that our parents had of how video games would end up turning us into like violent or paranoid people? That's what Fox News has ended up doing to our
and
parents.
to our parents, and people hated TV when it came out. They hated
Yeah.
radio. And now everybody's like, oh my God, get the kids off their
Mhm.
phones.
Yeah.
I think they're brain. I don't agree. I mean, I don't
Hmm.
think children should have, little ones
Yeah.
should. But
Yeah.
I think that their brains are so conditioned to deal
Hmm.
with what they're doing that that's where we've gotten to. That's
Yeah.
our progression as humanity. So I don't,
Hmm.
I
I mean,
don't.
I obviously like because my focus is in the economy, I really see this as related to a lot of economic policy that has been perpetuated by both Democrats and Republicans
You're
over
here.
the last 30 years, where it didn't really matter which one you were, like the policies were always going to be oriented towards big investors, big corporations, like how do we remove them from any democratic oversight? Just, even Obama, like the handling of the financial crisis, we had an opportunity there to fundamentally, transform our financial system. And we didn't do anything because the major advisors were all like ex Goldman Sachs
Pay him out.
CEOs.
Oh, yeah.
And as a result, like we've disenfranchised like my entire generation of millennials. Like we'd have no even like prospect of having a retirement, right? Like that is something that seems so crazy to us as even a notion of. And so I think it's just like over time, we've created so much insecurity, inequality that it makes it easy to scapegoat like immigrants, right? Like for the globalization that was unleashed by Clinton, right? Like, and there's a lot of these things that I think come back to some of our economic just ideology and policy.
Absolutely. And my son's generation, he's 54. I don't know what they're called, but they've been pushed out of the political scene. I mean,
Mm,
the politics is just these old people like me who don't even know how to use a cell phone. I mean, we have totally disenfranchised a whole generation of
mm,
Americans. So now
mhm,
I want to move on to your work at the UN because you
mhm,
worked at the UN and you have devoted your career to helping governments build
mhm,
resilient and diversified economies that create broad-based prosperity. Talk to us about how you were able to do that
mhm,
and how this model could be applied to Vermont.
yeah. So I was working for the UN's Industrial Development Organization, and industrial policy is kind of just like old school development policy where the government strategically protects and promotes certain economic sectors or activities. And so what I would do is I would work with governments over a longer period of time because I realized very few of these governments are actually writing their own policies in the first place. It was all being written by these external consultants or like UN organizations, and most of the time it would either sit on a shelf somewhere, never to be actually implemented, or it was like they were implementing stuff they didn't really fully understand and wasn't aligned to their context or interests. And so a lot of it was starting with like, what is it that you're really trying to achieve with this economic policy, right? That always start there. And so, in Myanmar, it was in a rural urban inequality reduction. In Ukraine, it was peace. In Mozambique, it was resiliency, right? Like depending on what you're trying to achieve. And then thinking about, okay, so in Myanmar, for example, if it was the first Ministry of Economy I worked with that was majority women. So it was fascinating. And I think that's why they focused on inequality reduction. But They were they were, recognizing if they wanted to expand, for example, textiles, that they shouldn't just focus on attracting multinational corporations who know how to consolidate wealth better than anyone and focus on supporting rural cooperatives and informal firms and local textile and producers as a way to support like more broad-based equitable development there. And then to think through, okay, so who are you targeting? How are you going to do it? And what are the policy instruments that you have at your disposal, right? Like, do you want to use incentives or disincentives or trainings or regulations or, thinking through all those different options and then building systems to really monitor and evaluate the
So
impact
how
over
would you
time.
bring that to Vermont? I mean, what do you see here in Vermont that you
Yeah.
could do to create that?
Yeah. Well, and that's why for me running for governor, actually, I feel much more comfortable with in the legislature because my whole background has been in the executive branch focused on implementation. And so this is about in this moment us also going through a clear process of engaging Vermonters to really be clear on like what is it that we're trying to achieve here? And then really thinking through, like what do we already have that is working well in line with that? So let's say food, I think we need to increase our food self-sufficiency. We need to increase like local food production. And so how do we support like our farmers and regenerative food systems and things like this to increase the production of that food here? And that becomes, like the strategies by which you think about the instruments you have available to you, the capacities of the agencies, and the practicality of how you design those types of support.
And women tend to be collaborative. I
Yes.
mean, women tend to bring people around the table
Hmm.
and oftentimes are more willing to take ideas and implement them. And I'm sorry to all the gentlemen out there, and maybe the younger generation is different, but
Hmm.
I live in a different generation where, that's a little, it's like talk to the hand, stop mansplaining. I mean, whatever. But women leaders tend to collaborate. And I think it's time that we had another female governor, quite frankly. So I wanted to ask you, I'm a little worried about Social Security. I was going to get into that. I'm wondering why we are not taking away the cap on Social Security payments. I mean, if you reach like $170,000, you no
Hmm.
longer have to pay into Social Security. I don't
Mm.
understand why we don't lift that cap, but I'm wondering if let's say the federal government does take away our Social Security, our Medicare, how is Vermont going to be poised to be able to help people? I mean, we have to think about that because I'm
I
not so
know.
sure
I know.
that this is going to be around forever.
I know. I've been talking with Mike Pichek about that, our treasurer, because I'm actually very concerned about a stock market crash soon, and I'm worried about our elders' retirements and pensions. Our state pensions also are invested in the stock market. And what are the protective mechanisms that we have to make sure that we have some underwriting to support that? And I don't know. I mean, this is related to a bigger issue of just we've allowed in this country for finance to become the major driver of our economic system. So we have been gotten way too comfortable with the idea that like money just makes money. And so as a result, we put all of our money into this stock market that right now would describe our economy as like a top heavy Jenga tower. Yeah, like it is teetering in terms of like a very small, like 10% of the population is driving all consumer spending, while the rest of the population is going further and further into debt. And like that is not a stable structure that you want for an economy. And so I really want to make sure that we are also building systems where you're investing in Vermont, not in just the stock market, right? Like, because that's where you end up getting these really great multipliers, and it's a much more stable kind of investment too, and resilient one.
Well, it's
And
like
I
the
think it's like aligned to our values.
well, it's like the community loan fund.
Hmm.
Isn't that what they do? Is they guarantee like an 8% return and you invest in, yeah. Well, that would be great if we could have our own sort of little Vermont
Yes.
stock market because all of us, me included, my retirement is sitting there and I don't know what we would do. We'd have to sell our home if we lost our
Yeah.
retirement. So I just wanted to talk to you about quickly about our planet. Today in Burlington, we expect it to be in the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Planet is warming, and anyone who says it is a hoax should be held accountable.
Yeah.
Do you believe we are doing enough in Vermont to combat our climate collapse? Should we be providing more subs? Look at, I put solar panels in what, Rick, 12 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was expensive and I had to get a mortgage to do it. Paid
Oh,
it off at $400 a month for 10 years.
wow.
And I got a small subsidy from the feds, I guess, to do it and state to offset the expense. But we also were getting a great rate from the electric company so that we or our daughter didn't pay an electric bill for
Mm-hmm.
10 years. Well, then the legislature changed that
Yep.
and screwed us. And so
Mm-hmm.
when they came back and said, "Hey, would you like to put more solar?" I said, "Why would I do that? Because now I have to pay an electric bill because they pulled the rug out from under me. Why would they do that?"
I
Well,
know.
I mean, that's Bernie Sanders thinks every house in this country should have solar for at least
Mm-hmm.
hot water. And
Yeah.
how in Vermont do we incentivize solar so that more people can afford it? Because it is amazing that those little panels out there keep my daughter and us from having to pay an electric bill.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Yeah. No, definitely. And again, this is where, like, I don't know, there's so many people in Vermont who live off the grid. There is a value here of some like
Yes.
self-reliance that I think is
Yes.
really important right now. And energy is one of those clear areas. Like, we are very import dependent on our energy. And it's super concerning for me in this moment. Yeah, our governor has not been a friend to renewable or to solar. And
So
it's
insane.
very counterintuitive to me because we have so many solar companies, right? Like that came up here. Like we have been a leader in that sort of area,
And
but
wind companies, NRG. Do you know there
Mhm.
was a governor? I'm not going to name his name, but Rick, you can help me on this. There was a hydro opportunity down in
Yes, yes,
Connecticut.
Douglas.
Up, yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Oh,
And I love. And by the way, I really honor him. I think in many
yeah.
ways he's a beautiful human being, and I love him. But
Hmm.
in this instance, it was a huge mistake to not buy into that hydro, which would have
Hmm.
supported Vermont. So I
Yeah,
hope
it would have covered if we yeah, it was the Connecticut River, which is
good for
between
you for
Vermont and
knowing
New
more.
Hampshire, and it would have covered a third of Vermont's energy needs if
Now
we had.
Massachusetts and yeah. So
Hmm.
anyway, so thank you for all that.
Definitely.
So we're going to move into democracy because as we are about to celebrate our 250
Yeah.
years, we are the oldest democracy and it is being attacked blatantly by the Republicans. Do
Hmm.
you have hope that we can sustain our democracy here in the U.S.? And I know there's a lot of people calling for Vermont to leave our uh, our union and become a republic. And I said that to my husband this morning, and he said, "Well, 50% of our ability to survive comes from the federal government. What are we going to do to become our own little, Luxembourg or whatever little country? We can't do that because so much comes from the federal government. But I'll tell you, I'm at a point now where, boy, I'd love to see Vermont go back to being a republic. I mean, democracy, we're losing. Look at the grift going on in Washington. It's all
Hmm.
right out in the open, and there's nothing we can do about it. And the Constitution be challenged by the Supreme Court this week on citizenship rights. I mean, where do you land on this, Amanda?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is democracy. I feel like is actually the most important thing. Like democracy and economy are two sides of the same coin, and we can't really fix one without the other in many ways. And I would say I don't know if we've genuinely been living in a democracy. So I think a lot of people feel like it's a bit of a sham. So I know there's been studies that have shown since the 1980s that there's been a near zero correlation between public opinion and public policy in
Oof.
Washington. Like what has determined it is corporate lobbying and the interests of economic elites. And so the thing is like we are seeing what happens when you allow too much power to be consolidated by government or by corporations and the corrupting influence that sort of follows. And so again, my hope now lies with states. I think states, the whole promise that of our federalist structure was that we would be a bulwark against authoritarianism and a living laboratory of democracy. And since the 1980s, as we've been seeing, like, let's say a democratic deficit, as it were, in our systems, we've also witnessed simultaneously this rise in what people call like deliberative democracy or more direct citizen engagement in policymaking, so that it's not just politicians. And we have that tradition here. We have this tradition of town meeting that has been eroded. It is not super accessible right now, but this idea of just having people sit, talk through the challenges we're facing, propose ideas and solutions at the local level, at the state level, in terms of the visioning, I think we can be a genuine model of a different type of democratic system that aligns with our traditions, but also is in line with a larger trend across this country and around the world of like what the future of democracy really looks like.
Oof. Well, you're extraordinary. I have hundreds and hundreds of questions I could give you, from immigration all the way to women's rights. But my time is
Mm.
coming to an end. I want you to know how much I admire you,
Oh.
Amanda Janoo, and I'm so honored to know you and to hear you speak. And I really believe that you are committed. You're so authentic, and you're so deeply bright and brilliant and intelligent that um, the one thing I want to end with is that I think we have to end the money in politics, because I know that's a big deal for you and for everybody else who's trying to run. And the Supreme Court has not helped us, but that's an area that we really need to focus on. But my
Mhm.
time has run out. I may have to have you back on my show, but
I would
before
love
then, we'll know where
to.
things land. And I'm going to see you around. I'm going to see you at the Warren Parade, I believe.
Oh, good. Yay. Are
So,
you, who are you, where are
well,
you visiting?
my husband is Ethan Allen, and he's because we're doing a film on Ethan Allen, and he loves Ethan Allen. And so he's got a big flag that said, "We the people are pissed." And we're marching in front of the Queen City, Vermont indivisible float, which was put
Mm,
together by that group. And I think it's a big constitution. And all the people on the float are dressed as patriots from
mm.
1776.